Hello and welcome back. In this episode we're going to be taking a look at the ChoiceChip widget. The ChoiceChip widget works much like the conventional standard chip widget. However, the ChoiceChip widget allows the user to select and deselect the chip. You'll notice our homepage state class contains a scaffold with an app bar, and inside the body of the scaffold we're going to create a ChoiceChip, like so. You'll notice the squiggle there in our IDE because the parameter label is required and the parameter selected is required. We'll specify a placeholder label for the purposes of this demonstration, and we will specify selected as false initially. You'll notice that specifying the label and selected will create our ChoiceChip like so over on the right hand side. However, you'll notice that the ChoiceChip is disabled, and when the user taps it, nothing happens. That's because we haven't specified the onSelected callback function. The onSelected callback function is executed every time the ChoiceChip is selected or deselected by the user, essentially every time they tap on the ChoiceChip. You'll notice it provides us with a Boolean value of whether or not the ChoiceChip is selected or not. By default, onSelected is null, which disables the ChoiceChip, hence why it appears greyed out in much the same way as a disabled button would. What we can do, however, is specify onSelected as just an empty callback function, giving us the value of whether or not the ChoiceChip is selected, and you'll notice the ChoiceChip then becomes enabled. However, you'll notice that selecting the ChoiceChip by tapping on it does nothing. That's because the selected parameter is hard-coded to a false value. What we can do is create a property in our state class called value, which can be initialized to false. We can update the selected parameter of the ChoiceChip to use this value property, and inside the onSelected callback function we can set the state to update that value property with the value provided in the callback function, whether or not the ChoiceChip is selected. Doing so, you'll notice how when we tap the ChoiceChip we can now see it becomes selected in the application's primary colour palette, and then deselected using a grey colour palette. You'll notice a number of other parameters that allow you to customise the ChoiceChip in greater detail. For example, we'll take a look at the avatar widget. The avatar widget is placed on the left hand side of the ChoiceChip. For example, we can specify a circle avatar with my initials as its child. You'll notice we then have that circle avatar with my initials appearing on the left hand side of the ChoiceChip, with the ChoiceChip still being able to be tapped to be selected and deselected as standard. You'll notice you can also customise the text style of the label using the label style parameter, the padding surrounding the label using the label padding parameter. You can also customise the press elevation and the default elevation. You'll notice on the right hand side the default elevation is 0, making the chip flat on the page. However, you'll notice when we press the chip we gain some elevation to make the chip stand out to the user, indicating that they have pressed on the chip. You can customise those two elevation values using the elevation parameter and the press elevation parameter. You can also change the colour of the chip when it's selected, the colour of the chip when it's disabled, and the standard background colour of the chip. For example, specifying a background colour of red, you'll notice that the chip will now use a red background colour instead of the grey. However, it still uses the application's primary colour when it's selected. You can change this by changing the selected colour. You'll notice how now, when the ChoiceChip is selected, it will use that red colour, and deselected will revert back to that grey default colour. You can also use the disabled colour parameter to update the colour of the choice chip when it's disabled, which we saw at the beginning of this video. You can also specify the tooltip for the chip. You can specify the chip shape, its clip behaviour, a focus node for the chip, whether or not the chip should be automatically focused when it's brought into view. You can specify the padding surrounding the ChoiceChip widget, its visual density, the material tap target size for the tap event when the user presses on the chip. You can update the shadow colour and the selected shadow colour. These two essentially allow you to distinguish between the default shadow colour and the shadow colour when the choice chip is selected. And finally, you can update the border around the avatar using the avatar border parameter. Essentially then, the choice chip allows you to have a chip that can be selected and deselected by the user. This works slightly differently to the conventional chip widget, which standard simply displays information on the page without allowing the user to select the chip and deselect it. And the choice chip also works differently to the action chip widget. The action chip widget allowing the user to press on the chip, executing an onPressed callback function. However, the action chip only has a single state, whereas here the choice chip can either be selected or deselected, allowing the user to toggle between those two states, with the action chip widget only allowing the user to press the chip itself and not containing any selected or deselected states. Essentially then, you should use the choice chip when you want to have either a single chip or a list of chips that can be selected and or deselected by the user. I hope you found this video useful. Thank you very much for watching.